We often walk through busy streets or browse social media, observing faces that radiate unwavering stability. However, behavioral psychology teaches us that the surface rarely reveals the totality of an individual's inner architecture. There is a silent phenomena where mental health hides behind behaviors that our society not only accepts but fervently admires. Constant strength, relentless productivity, and unwavering good humor may, in fact, be the foundations of a structure about to collapse. We need to look beyond the obvious to understand that being well has become an exhausting performance for many. This script seeks to unveil what happens when the stage lights go out and the person finds themselves alone with the weight of their own invisible existence. Contemporary society has created a dangerous pedestal for those who never show weakness. We value the employee who never misses work, the friend who always has a word of optimism, and the family member who solves all problems, without ever complaining of tiredness. However, this social admiration acts as a psychological trap, reinforcing the idea that vulnerability is a flaw to be hidden at all costs. When we reward only the shell of strength, we encourage the individual to stifle their cries for help in order to maintain a functional image. Perfectionism ceases to be a pursuit of excellence and becomes a heavy armor used to protect an emotional core that feels deeply inadequate or fragmented, hoping that no one will notice the cracks behind the shine. Within this scenario, we find the complex dynamics of smiling depression. Unlike the classic stereotype of depression that paralyzes the subject in bed, here the person maintains an active social and professional life, often achieving high levels of success. Internally, however, the exhaustion is absolute. The energy spent to maintain the smile and the appearance of normality consumes the last available cognitive resources. It is a state of emotional dissociation where the individual observes their own life as a spectator, feeling like an imposter in their own apparent happiness. Understanding that overproductivity can be an escape mechanism is vital for developing deeper compassion and saving lives. Before physical and mental collapse makes medical intervention an inevitable emergency, the anatomy of the psychological mask is built with layers of protection aimed at maintaining absolute control over the external environment. Many individuals face devastating internal battles while projecting an image of dominance and serenity. This need for control often arises as a response to past traumas or environments where instability was the rule. For these people, any sign of emotional disorder is interpreted as an existential threat. They become architects of an artificial reality where every word is calculated and every gesture is planned to avoid judgment from others. The mental system, under this immense pressure, operates in a state of constant hypervigilance, draining vitality and preventing authentic connection with others, as intimacy presupposes the risk of being truly seen. A subtle but revealing clinical sign of this pressure is the habit of excessive apologizing. People who carry unprocessed trauma often feel that their mere existence is a burden to others. They apologize for taking up space, for expressing an opinion, or even for things that are completely beyond their control. This behavior reflects fragmented self-esteem and a deep fear of rejection. The constant apology is a desperate attempt to appease the environment and ensure that no one feels bothered by them. It's the echo of a child who learned that their safety depended on being invisible or never causing trouble. Recognizing this pattern is the first step in deconstructing the belief that one's very presence in the world needs constant justification. Another common manifestation of the psychological mask is irritability, which masks deep depression. In many contexts, sadness is seen as passive, but for a mind under pressure, it can explode in the form of anger, impatience, and hostility. This irritability functions as a shield. It's safer to appear angry than vulnerable. When the emotional system is overloaded, tolerance for small stimuli disappears, transforming trivial inconveniences into triggers for fits of rage. The brain, in survival mode, interprets emotional exhaustion as external aggression, reacting defensively. It's crucial to understand that behind a constantly grumpy person, there may be an exhausted heart that no longer knows how to ask for rest without appearing weak or defeated in the face of life's demands. The paradox of the sad clown perfectly illustrates the use of humor as a sophisticated defense mechanism. Individuals who use laughter to divert attention from their own pain create an insurmountable barrier through comedy. By making everyone laugh, they ensure that no one asks difficult questions or looks too closely into their eyes. Humor acts as smoke, concealing an internal fire and allowing the individual to maintain control of the social narrative. However, This strategy creates profound isolation because, although surrounded by people, no one knows the truth behind the jokes. Laughter becomes a solitary performance where the external validation of the audience fails to fill the void left by the absence of genuine, non-judgmental listening. There is a painful narrative about those who occupy the role of safe haven for everyone around them. These people are the pillars of their communities, the patient listeners and wise counselors who never refuse help. However, they often find themselves in devastating loneliness, feeling they don't have the right to have their own hands held. The social expectation that they are unbreakable prevents them from seeking support, creating a cycle of forced the fear of disappointing those who depend on their strength keeps them trapped on a pedestal of isolation. They take care of everyone, but who takes care of the caregiver when the weight of the world becomes unbearable? The silent cries of these people are drowned out by the noise of others' needs. If you identify with what's being said here, share your story in the comments or leave a like and subscribe. Exploring these hidden truths is essential so that we can build a support network that doesn't depend solely on obvious signs of suffering. The journey of self-knowledge requires us to look at our own masks and question which parts of ourselves we are sacrificing to maintain an image of perfection. True human connection flourishes in vulnerability, not in simulating a strength we don't possess. By sharing our experiences, we validate the pain of others and break the cycle of silence that fuels so many modern pathologies. Understanding the psychology behind these behaviors is the first step towards a more authentic and healthy life, where being is more important than seeming. Perfectionism, when analyzed through the lens of behavioral psychology, reveals itself as a desperate fear of failure. It's not a healthy pursuit of quality, but rather a defensive tactic against shame. The perfectionist believes that if they do everything flawlessly, they will be protected from judgment, criticism, and rejection. This mentality creates a state of chronic anxiety, as the standard of perfection is unattainable by nature. Every small flaw is perceived as a catastrophe that exposes their supposed incompetence. The brain becomes trapped in a cycle of hypercorrection and severe Life becomes a sequence of tasks to be performed without error, transforming existence into an endless test of endurance devoid of any genuine pleasure. Decision fatigue is another invisible consequence of this cognitive and emotional exhaustion. When the mind is saturated by internal battles and maintaining social facades, the ability to process simple choices is drastically reduced. Trivial decisions, such as choosing what to have for dinner or what clothes to wear, become monumental burdens that generate paralysis. The brain, exhausted from managing hidden emotional crises, simply no longer has the energy for trivial logical evaluations. This state of exhaustion causes the individual to feel overwhelmed by life itself, leading to a feeling of helplessness. What appears to be indecision or laziness to the outside world is, in fact, a sign that the person's central processor is operating at maximum capacity just to keep them functional. An alarming symptom that frequently accompanies this condition is this is the progressive loss of interest in hobbies and pleasures that previously brought joy and meaning to life. Activities that were once refuges become obligations or completely lose their appeal. Anhedonia is like the world losing its colors, leaving only shades of gray. The person continues performing tasks, but doesn't feel the emotional reward associated with them. This inner emptiness is dangerous because it removes the fuel necessary for resilience. Without pleasure, life becomes a funeral march of duties. Identifying anhedonia early is crucial, as it indicates that the brain's reward system is seriously compromised by chronic stress and the repression of fundamental emotions. The brain trapped in survival mode develops a cognitive tendency known as in this state, the individual always expects the worst possible scenario in any situation. Every unforeseen event is interpreted as the beginning of a total disaster. This distortion of thought is a defense mechanism. The brain believes that by anticipating the worst, it will somehow be prepared for the impact. However, the practical result is a permanent state of anxiety and dread. Living catastrophizing is like walking through an imaginary minefield, where each step is laden with unbearable tension. This mental pattern prevents rest and appreciation of the present, keeping the nervous system in a constant state of alert that consumes immense amounts of vital energy and harms physical health. Social isolation then emerges as a protective mechanism against a world that has become too exhausting to navigate. The act of canceling last-minute plans or avoiding meetings should not necessarily be interpreted as a lack of affection or disinterest in friends. Often, It is the only way the individual finds to preserve what little energy they have left. Social contact requires the use of a mask, and when the social battery is depleted, the effort to feign normality becomes unbearable. Isolation is a plea for silence from a mind that is already screaming inside. Understanding that distancing oneself from a loved one can be a symptom of emotional overload allows us to offer a silent and welcoming presence instead of demands that increase. Guilt. To change this reality, we need to develop a compassion that is truly analytical and profound. It is not enough to ask, "How are you?" We need to create environments where the response, "I'm not okay," is safe and welcomed. Recognizing the invisible signs of mental suffering in our colleagues, friends, and ourselves is a vital skill for collective survival. Early intervention, based on observing subtle changes in behavior, such as excessive perfectionism or defensive moods, can prevent tragedies. We must demystify the idea that mental health is merely the absence of diagnosed illnesses. It is, in fact, the ability to live authentically, integrating our light and shadows without the constant fear of being rejected for our wounded and imperfect humanity. Ultimately, true strength lies not in never falling, but in the courage to admit when the weight is too much. Deconstructing social masks is a painful yet liberating process that allows us to regain control of our own narrative. By naming our internal processes, such as catastrophizing or anhedonia, we remove the power these states exert over us. Psychology offers us the tools, but real change begins with the willingness to look in the mirror and recognize the person behind the performance. May we be safe havens for each other, but may we also have the wisdom to seek a safe haven for ourselves, understanding that no one is obligated to carry the whole world alone all the time. We hope this dive into the anatomy of the invisible has brought clarity to your own battles or those of the people you love. The journey to a healthy mind begins with education and empathy. That way I'll know you're enjoying the content. Your participation is fundamental so that we can continue bringing in-depth analyses of human behavior and personal development. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. By doing this, you help this knowledge reach more people who may be hiding behind their own masks right now. Leave your ideas in the comments about what we can cover on the channel. Until our next meeting, continue seeking the truth that lies beyond what the eyes can see.